And we are back with another episode of the Hockey Princess podcast. I am your host, the Hockey Princess. We have Crusty Old Guy again. Just as a reminder, make sure to hit that like and subscribe on either Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, however you listen to or watch us ramble about sports. Also, just a reminder, please do not get up while the puck's in play. Wait for the whistle. I promise the beer is still going to be there in 30 seconds once the whistle has been blown. Or just wait for the really nice guys that come around the 300 level with beer. And just stay in your seat, please. We have a lot to get to this week. A lot of stuff happened in the NHL. I shout out to the AHL for having a Black Friday sale. So I purchased a month's worth of AHL TV. So we got a bunch of Rockford stuff. Let's get into it. First of all, starting off with what we already knew before, that the NHL is pretty inconsistent in their rulings, in their beliefs of things. Because for those who don't know, I believe it was over the summer when they made the official ruling, the NHL, where they took away all the specialty jerseys, basically saying hockey is for everyone, but only if you make the NHL money. And so there was an instance this past week with Marc-Andre Fleury, had commissioned a helmet, a Native American decorated helmet, to celebrate, honor his wife's heritage. The NHL came and said, we will fine you if you wear it. Fleury said, all right, what are you really going to do? I'm Fleury. And then they were like, well, then we'll also fine the Minnesota Wild. And he's like, I dare you. And he wore it and he did not get fined. So, example one of how the NHL is inconsistent. Second example from this week, we have two incidences of Ryan Hartman was suspended for 2 games for slew-footing Alex DeBrincat of the Detroit Red Wings. So a tripping penalty gets 2 games, but Jacob Trouba essentially taking his stick like a hatchet to the head of a Boston Bruins person only gets a $5,000 fine. We love the inconsistency. For those who are new to the sport, yes, this is a normal thing that happens. We'd like to laugh about it.
Well, we're also inconsistent on our belief on the Trouba incident to begin with. So
I don't think we're
you saw it one way, I saw a couple angles, and it didn't look all that bad. So
and I am under the belief of, Jacob Trouba has a track history of being
yes, he does.
A little bit more violent. And so call it holding a grudge from the Jujhar Khaira incident, but you're an NHL player, you know how to wield your stick. You know how to hurt somebody and you know how to play the game. And I think there's a difference. And I think he knows that difference. And I think he likes to dance with that line and sometimes, go a couple of miles past that line. But anyways,
yes, I'll give you that. Yes.
Of the NHL. Next thing is the Minnesota Wild fired their head coach, Dean Evanson, and their assistant coach, Bob Woods. Dean Evanson was replaced with John Hines this week. I believe from what I heard, it was just because they were on a 6-game losing streak. They really were, nothing was really happening in Minnesota.
Yeah, the Wild was off to a really bad start. And I heard someplace else also that, their head coach was probably a victim of his own success. The Wild is in cap hell because they have $15 million on the books for players that are not playing there. Zach Parise and Suter. So the fact that they were able to make the playoffs and look good last year probably did not help them. Because it's still, they're 3 lines deep, but not with incredible talent besides Krill. They had to give up some defensemen. And I think the fact that, they're dealing $15 million below the cap than anybody else, I think it caught them up to them this year.
Fair enough.
And they've still got aspirations of trying to make the playoffs. So usually the guy who goes is the head coach.
Yeah. And then last but certainly not least in the NHL news, not involving the Chicago Blackhawks, but involving my favorite former Chicago Blackhawk. And I would also just like to say that I called this. I called it happening over the summer. I called it 3 weeks ago when I was making the financial breakdown of all the different places. I called it when everybody said that I was crazy and everybody was like, he's going to Toronto because he's rehabbing in Toronto. He was not going to Toronto. Toronto had no money. Patrick Kane signed a 1-year deal for $2.7 million to Detroit. I could not be more happy for him. He gets to play with his bestie, Alex DeBrincat. He gets to make some money. He gets to play on a team that, is not, whether people agree or disagree that, Detroit's a playoff contender, they're not a rebuild of a team. They're not a team that's either wildly bipolar, where they're either really hot or really, really not, like the New York Rangers last year. It's a new thing. And I love that he is on his revenge tour now. He signed there the day before Chicago plays Detroit. I would love if he plays tomorrow. Luke Richardson said, if he's ready to sign, he's ready to play. A girl can dream. I love it because it definitely sheds light onto how bad the situation was when he left. I think the Chicago Blackhawks and the front office really likes to sugarcoat, even though they let us listen to some of the phone calls in their TV show every shift. I think they still fabricate and sugarcoat a lot of what happened. He was there for 15 years. He won you 3 cups, and you essentially said, we don't want you anymore. There is not a place for you anymore. So then you ship him off to Siberia and then, try to fluff up the story of, we're getting this first rounder to play with Bedard and it'll be great veteran presence. You had that before. If you can't tell, I have a little bit of a grudge with the Blackhawk front office, just a smidge. But I am thrilled. I cannot wait. That means Patrick Kane's return to the United Center will be Sunday, February 25th. We'll be up in the boony rafters. If you would like friendship bracelets of Kane's in Blackhawk colors and Ranger colors and Deadwing colors, I will have. Believe me, I will have them. I am thrilled about this. Chris, the old guy, are you thrilled?
I'm thrilled. I just it'll be difficult. I pulled up the one picture of him in the winged wheel jersey. Patrick Kane was already acting like Patrick Kane, a little extra dig. He basically said, it's a real good looking jersey. And then he said, I hated it for a long time, but you still have to agree it's a pretty good looking jersey. For me, I got no ill feelings towards him. He was kicked to the curb, in my opinion. That's neither here nor there. I'm sure this is a little extra for him. He loves this kind of stuff. He's called Showtime for many, many reasons. With him, I just hope the hip holds up. He's chasing, American-born player records in the next couple of years. If he is able to play 3 years, he might be able to wrap them all up. So I wish him nothing but the best.
He did go through a physical today with the Detroit medical staff, and all of them were extremely thrilled at where he was physically, not just from a performance standpoint for a hockey player, but how much progress he's made since the surgery and where he's at so many months post-op. So hockey or not, that's just something that makes me feel good, because I'd like to see him back to his full potential, but as long as he's just progressing after that, because that was a big surgery. So hockey or not, I just like to, it makes me feel good that the doctors are saying that he's in a good place medically.
Yeah. And again, as I think I've said on this show once or twice, he's not the kid you want to bet against. He lives hockey. He lives for it, and now you have nothing but doubters out there. It should be very entertaining. He'll be ready to go. It's just if it holds up, it's a major surgery. And it hasn't looked good for anybody who's had this surgery yet. But it's going to be rough to see him in that jersey. It should be a really interesting night at the end of February. It'll be a good time, and I wish him nothing but the best, man. Good thing Detroit's now in the East, though. I'm glad.
Yeah. All right. So that is, do you have anything NHL not Hawks related?
No, we talked about the coaching changes, right? I don't think there's really anything else out there. No, I think everything else is Hawks related, right? You've got the one thing and trade. So start us off.
Before we get to that, we're just gonna go through the highlights. So as we've kind of talked about the US and the Canadian prospects every week since the season has started, they're all doing great. They're all averaging a point a game or close to a point a game. And so I wanted to go and kind of focus on the prospects that, are not in the NCAA, that are not in the CHL, that are kind of, in Finland, Sweden, Russia, that sort of situation. Because we all talk about them a lot. Really don't think Blackhawk media talks about them a ton. So here we go. So we got Roman Kanserov starting off with a couple of points so far in the KHL. He was a draft pick from this past summer. Same with Yuri Felkman. He's averaging a point a game. However, he hasn't scored in the past couple of games. Most of those points were front-ended, where he was having multi-point games right at the beginning of the season. Now it hasn't been as much, but, still impressive. Milton Oscarsson scored his first goal of the season this past week. The goal looked really good, but that's not the main thing that you notice when you see the clip of the goal. This kid is huge. He is a giant. He's a 6'6" defenseman. Like, he's huge. And that's the thing that you notice. He's a big kid. And I know it's a bit harder for the European players to make it over in terms of making the Rockford roster and Chicago. But I hope so, just for the sheer fact of how big this kid is. I love it. Peltonen, who was the last pick this past summer, scored about 9 points in 24 games. And then Ilya Safonov, who was a pick 2 years ago. He's a 6'4" center playing in the KHL, average about 12 points in 35 games. For those who don't know, the KHL is kind of like the major league over in Russia. That is all that we have on the prospects. The college kids are lighting it up. The junior kids are lighting it up. Paul Ludwinski is killing it.
Yep.
I cannot wait. And same with Gavin Hayes. Let's get into Rockford first.
Okay. I was just going to let your listeners know that, when you go over point totals and everything else, when you start talking about the European leagues and the KHL, understand that the scoring will be a lot different than in juniors or the college. There's not as many points put up on the board, and the kids don't get a lot of minutes. So when you hear people like averaging less than a half a point a game,
that's still okay.
That's usually the way it goes over there. That's all I wanted to say.
That's normal. No, thank you. First little bit of Rockford news is Antti Sorella is out for 2 weeks for a wrist injury. You figure nothing incredibly major because that's for such a short time that he's going to be out. But that is our only injured one. And then Joey Anderson and
the gut punch
were brought up to Chicago. So they were in the first game that we're going to talk about for Rockford, and then they move up to Chicago. So first game was be on the 22nd against Manitoba. Stauber was in net. This was a huge D-man game offensively. First the two goals that you have, they were scored by forwards, but if you look at the play, it's all it's the defenseman setting up the goal essentially. Either it being the original shot and then the forward just redirected it, or they're the ones setting up the play. Which is nice to see because offensively, I feel like the D-men have taken kind of a back seat. They've definitely struggled the past couple of weeks, but they definitely shined during that game. Particularly the first gut punch scoring it.
You froze on me.